workplace in the last year, and actually just went into effect on October 25th, was the Fair Pay and Safe Workplaces Executive Order, which requires federal contractors to report certain labor violations, and then is commonly referred to as the blacklisting rule, because the idea is that contractors who report lots of labor violations may get blacklisted from federal contracts. But the new deal that President-elect Trump did with Carrier, where there's been some speculation that there was some threats about Carrier's owned by a federal, but the parent company is a big federal contractor. Some of the speculation was that some of those negotiations had to do with whether Carrier was, or the parent contractor was going to continue to get federal contracts. I don't know the legality of all of that, but I wonder if we might expect a new blacklisting type of rule that comes down out of the Trump administration for employers that take jobs out of the country. That's one of those things that sort of is a hot topic. But the next topic that we have by Leah Stevens-Block is she's going to talk about employee benefits. She's going to tell us what to expect from Trump Care.
Hello. So sticking with our current theme of who knows what's going to happen, I'm going to try to give you some of our best guesses on what you might expect with the Trump administration and addressing the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. So obviously one of the hottest topics over the election cycle, if not over the past 6 years, has been the Republican Party's plan to repeal and replace the Affordable Care Act. Now, with all the chatter and the buzzwords and talking about Obamacare, we almost have zero idea what Trump Care might look like or how that will be implemented. You know, the good news is that Trump's plan, as posted on his election website, provides us with the most insight of what his administration's plan will be for the Affordable Care Act. The bad news is that's just about 1,000 words. So again, we have very little idea on what the substance of the plan is, on how that will be enacted over the time and what we'll see. Here's what we do know. It is very unlikely that we'll see an outright repeal of the Affordable Care Act. If that scenario was to happen, it would mean the end of the healthcare exchanges overnight. 1.7 million people could lose healthcare coverage. It would cause great uncertainty in the healthcare industry, if not for the American public as a whole. So we'll likely see a more phased approach, and we've already seen Donald Trump, as he's met with the Obama administration, sort of rein back on some of his bigger promises. He's already stated that he does plan to keep the mandate for pre-existing healthcare conditions. He does plan to keep and allow individuals that are 26 years and younger to stay on their parents' health care. So we'll likely see no big changes with respect to those two issues. And those are kind of two really key components of the Affordable Care Act that have worked and that are good things. With respect to the individual mandates, we'll see that go away. It's very likely that there will be no more individual mandates. There will be no penalties for individuals who are not purchasing health care. In addition to addressing the Affordable Care Act and repealing and replacing portions of that, the Trump administration has also promised an overhaul of healthcare policies. So in addition to what we see happen to the Affordable Care Act, and I'll talk a little more about how that would affect employers specifically, but we'll also see some healthcare policies coming out of the Trump administration. Trump plans to modify existing laws that inhibit the sale of insurance across state lines. So we'll see policies and laws to allow the sale of insurance across state lines with the hopes that increased competition would lower premium prices. He's also talked about allowing individuals to deduct healthcare insurance premiums from their tax return. As you know, employers currently can deduct premiums, so that will have an effect on employers eventually. We don't know what that's going to look like, though. There's a couple plans touted Paul Ryan has talked about caps on the tax exemptions that employers can take. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when we address the Cadillac tax that will likely go away. Another thing that the Trump administration has talked about and really could result in a good thing is more transparency in healthcare billing so that people can shop competitive prices, that we know how we're being charged when we visit our doctors, when we visit the emergency room. And finally, the administration is looking to remove barriers to free market in the pharmaceutical industry, which would mean that you could purchase your drugs and pharmaceuticals from Canada or Mexico. So those are some of the policies that they're looking to tweak. It really is unclear how any of this will be implemented and what, if any of it, we will actually see happen over the course of the next 4 years. Now, the big question here and why we're here is how does this affect you as employers? And there's a couple things that you'll see that might affect you. First of all, like the individual mandates, the Trump administration will likely repeal the employer mandates. Does anybody have, the employer mandates are for employers with 50 or more full-time equivalent employees. Does anybody have, is it affected by the employer mandate? So as you know, that with the employer mandate comes a lot of, it's an enormous amount of bookkeeping. So you'll be happy to know that's likely going to go away. This year, not so much, so don't stop reporting now, but in the future, you'll likely have a lot less burden with that. On the flip side, that really calls into question the continued viability of the exchanges. So with the repeal of that, the exchanges are likely to go away. So are the subsidies and small business taxes that individual employers might be receiving to incentivize the use of the exchanges. So the second thing that is kind of a big one is the Cadillac tax. Does everybody know what the Cadillac tax is, or have you heard about the Cadillac tax? It's basically an excise tax. It was set to go into place, I think, this year, and the Obama administration actually extended it out. So it hasn't been put into place, but it's a key component of the Affordable Health Care Act. And what it is it's a 40% tax on employer-sponsored coverages that exceed certain benefit thresholds.